My wife, 23, and I, 26, were struggling to pay the bills for a while by the time I asked her to get a job. We had a newborn baby, so she'd been trying to work from home by starting her own business, but it was costing us more money than it was earning. It was really disappointing, and neither of us were feeling very hopeful at this time in our life. She agreed to get a part-time job and told me she started applying to anything around the area. Not even 3 days went by before she told me she was hired at a gas station down the street and she'd be working at night so we didn't have to pay anyone to watch our newborn. It seemed like it was going to work out great. 2 weeks went by without a paycheck from her job, and I was missing my wife in bed. It was a hard adjustment, although my wife seemed really happy. She said she enjoyed her job, and it felt good to be making money for us. At least she was happy, I thought. Another week went by, and she still didn't have a paycheck. When I asked her what was taking so long, she said she accidentally put in the wrong account number on her direct deposit form. It was frustrating, but things happen, I thought. She continued working for another 2 weeks without a paycheck. I'd finally had enough. What would delay her paycheck for so long? Then I got the unsettling thought that maybe my wife wasn't going to work at all. She was very happy, didn't seem at all concerned about the money she was missing, and she would only ever tell me not to worry about it. So one night, I decided to have my friend follow her to work. I had to stay with the baby, and she wouldn't be looking for my friend's car. He called me after 35 minutes with really bad news. My wife had driven way past the gas station into some random house. She went inside, and he hasn't heard or seen anything since. My heart nearly stopped when I heard this. I told him to come get me. We took the baby to my mom's house on the way to this random house my wife was visiting. I tried to open the front door, even though my friend thought I was crazy. It was locked anyway. So I sat in the car with my friend watching the house and wondering what to do. Finally, 1 hour before her shift would end, the porch light came on, and she came out of the house with a man. He kissed her passionately on the lips before she left. Sweat started pouring out of me, and I felt like I was falling. My friend drove at a distance from her until she got to a diner. She spent my money to pay for her breakfast, so she didn't have a part-time job. She was going to this guy's house and spending the night every night. My friend didn't really know what to say, but it was good to just have someone there with me. I asked him what I should do, and he suggested I hire a PI. I couldn't afford that, but he did give me an idea. I asked him if he could sit outside the house at least one more time to get some pictures. Any pictures would help. He agreed. I also bought and installed a GPS tracker on my wife's car. It was so hard for me to resist following her or confronting her with what I found out. I waited 4 days to give my friend and the GPS tracker time to get some evidence. While I waited, I tried to figure out where I knew this man from. He looked so familiar, and it wasn't until I stopped thinking about it that his identity dawned on me. He was the pastor of a church I visited about 3 times years ago. He was married when I visited the church, but I wasn't sure if that was still the case. I sent him a friend request on Facebook, and he accepted it, probably assuming I was a churchgoer. I told my friend I knew who the guy was, and he said I would be either really pleased or really upset with the pictures he got. My friend went above and beyond to help me. He snuck up to the bedroom window of the house, using something to stand on, to take pictures through the window. There was just enough light to tell that it was my wife, having sex with the pastor. He was right, I didn't know if I was pleased or upset. I was upset, but pleased I could prove she was cheating on me. It was time to turn my wife's world upside down. After she left for work one night, I took all my stuff and our son to my mom's house. I left divorce papers on the table, and right when my wife should have been arriving home, I posted the pictures my friend took and the GPS tracker information on Facebook. I tagged her, her friends and family, and the pastor himself. There was a digital explosion. All of the pastor's Facebook friends, including his wife, reacted to my post. All of my wife's friends and family commented, asking me what I was going to do, how she could do this, and offering me consolation. Some of them flat out insulted my wife, telling her she was a terrible person and didn't deserve to see her infant baby anymore. That was harsher than even I could be. My wife called me, dismayed and overwhelmed. She wasn't sure what to ask about first, but she started with asking me to take my post off Facebook. I refused. She asked me how I expected her to survive after divorce, and that was the stupidest question she could have asked. I said, "How about you get a job like you told me you were going to do, instead of sleeping with a married pastor behind my back?" She gasped, claiming she didn't know he was married. The divorce went super well for me. I won primary custody of our son, and my wife was ordered to pay me child support and alimony. She was able to keep the house because it was in her name, but she failed to make the mortgage payments. She had no choice but to move in with her parents, who lived out of state. They didn't want her to move in, but eventually said she could stay in the basement. It's good for her that her car was paid off by me at this point, because I'm sure that it would have been repoed if it wasn't. She called me often, crying. She missed our son and me. She admitted she'd been a lazy and inconsiderate wife. She swore she would never be the same person again, but it didn't matter to me anymore. The pastor's wife was on a missionary trip, while her husband had sex with my wife in their house. She filed for divorce as well, and actually thanked me for investigating and revealing what was going on. She asked me if I wanted to go out to dinner some night, and I agreed. It didn't take me long to be able to afford a new house for my son and I. My mom watches him each day, and she's never been happier. Things can work out, and time keeps moving even if you don't. I couldn't stop moving because my son depends on me. I've also started speaking positively to myself, choosing to focus on the goodness in life, rather than the negativity. Wow, OP. What you've endured is an extremely difficult thing to go through. I'm so sorry your wife didn't consider you or your son before choosing to pretend she got a job. She made that selfish decision knowing it would only benefit her. I don't know what her plan would have been if you realized she never got a paycheck, but people who cheat don't usually think very far into the future or consider the possibilities of being caught. You absolutely made the right decision by getting a GPS tracker and asking your friend to take some pictures. I love how you remembered who this man was and actually added him as a friend on Facebook. It was an excellent decision to leave the house with your son and post the evidence just as your wife arrived home to an empty house and divorce papers. I have faith that you'll find a woman who's not only considerate of your wants and needs, but also accepts your son as her own. Now let's get into today's second story. My wife admitted to me before our wedding that she got very drunk and slept with another man. She said she knew him a while before, off and on for years. She never saw him romantically, but that night she was so drunk, she didn't even remember how she got to his house. She actually wasn't sure if she was drugged. Considering how honest and serious she was being, I went through marrying her. I was more nervous than before, but the fact that she confessed and wanted to be honest had to mean something, right? She swore to me that she would never speak to said man ever again. That was a necessary promise. She also promised she would never be unfaithful to me in marriage. We had a good marriage for 5 years. We argued sometimes, but it was about normal stuff, and we both knew how to control our anger and walk away or drop it if necessary. We always came back together afterwards and appreciated the other's maturity about the disagreement. That all meant nothing when I came home early from work one day. I thought my wife was still at work, but her car was in the driveway and another was parked on the side street. I didn't think too much of it and went inside. I heard a voice upstairs and thought maybe it was the TV. I got to the upstairs hallway and heard the bed squeaking, followed by moaning and a man's voice. Then my wife's voice and more moaning. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It felt like my soul was floating above my body because I couldn't allow myself to register what was happening. It was my worst nightmare. I pushed the door open a little and saw my wife was doing my stepbrother. All the air left my lungs. I know I looked mortified, but my face couldn't have been as disturbed as theirs when they saw me watching them. They leaped up, but it was happening in slow motion to me. I remembered at this moment that I put a hidden camera in our bedroom 2 years ago. It was plugged in and set to record during the times I wasn't home. The camera would upload these videos onto my desktop through Wi-Fi. I hadn't even looked in the videos folder since I installed it because I never felt the need to. Thank God I'd forgotten about it, and thank God my wife never discovered it. Since she cheated before our wedding, I knew I needed to watch her. But my own stepbrother, I couldn't believe it. I was looking right at him, junk and all, and I couldn't believe it. We were never close, but I didn't think my wife and him ever had a chance to grow a relationship. I was wrong. Dead wrong. How many times had this happened? Was our bedroom the only place they'd had sex? My stepbrother still lived with my father and stepmom, so I'm sure they didn't go there. So it was at this point that I started screaming. I screamed for him to get out, which he did very quickly. My wife wanted to leave too, but she also wanted to apologize to me. No matter what she said, I hated it. I screamed at her, face red as a tomato I'm sure, to get out of my house. She hesitated, even though she was sobbing and gasping for air. When she didn't leave and tried saying pointless words to me, I grabbed a porcelain horse, a statue my wife cherished, and threw it across the room. It smashed into a million pieces, and she ran out of the house, holding her clothes. Thank God I didn't have any children with this woman. I think a part of me knew she was going to be unfaithful. I got on my desktop computer and found the video from today, plus some. She'd done this 7 times at our house, in our bed. One of those times, I had sex with her the same night. I posted their sex video on Facebook, tagging my wife and stepbrother. All of our family freaked out. They couldn't believe how uncensored the video was and that my wife and stepbrother would stoop so low. My dad called me. He was crying. At this point, I felt kind of bad, but he only wanted to console me. He said he never wanted me to experience heartbreak, and the fact that it happened with my brother killed him. I told him it wasn't his fault, and if he wanted to help me, he needed to kick out my stepbrother. He agreed immediately. My wife tried arranging to meet with me so we could talk about things, but there was nothing to discuss. I told her she broke my heart and trust in everyone. After the affair fog wore off, my wife realized the magnitude of her actions. She didn't try to get anything from me in the divorce, and she accepted the fault and karma that followed. I kicked her out, and now she lives with a roommate. I'm happy to report that I still have a great job and a place to live. I got a dog and a bearded dragon. When all of this first happened, I was pretty messed up emotionally and slept around with some women. I think I'm ready to get back into the dating scene, but I wanted to share my story first. I survived the worst moment in my life and recovered from the pain, blaming myself and wondering why. I realized that I am all I need, but the company of my pets and other women helped. Anyone can get through anything because as humans, we wouldn't have to endure anything we couldn't handle. Wow, OP, you've experienced a very traumatic event. I am so sorry your wife failed to consider you in her decisions. She became selfish and egotistical. Anyone who genuinely loves their partner wouldn't hide anything from them, especially something of this magnitude. If your wife would have put your needs above her own, or even at the same level as hers, this wouldn't have happened. No one needs to be cheated on, but inconsiderate spouses only think about what they want or deserve. The ego is a dangerous thing that can easily get out of hand. You handled yourself as best you could and made the wise decision to divorce. Thank you for sharing your story, OP. I have faith you'll be able to find a wise woman who communicates openly with you and honors you as her spouse. I wish you the best of luck going forward. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts on what happened. Take care.